Less reliable are academic publications, for they are only as good as the author's skill as a historian. Most academic experts on terrorism are experts in other fields who do not follow the literature on terrorism closely, and therefore pick selectively only those facts that support their arguments. As a rule, they are good at generating hypotheses, but not in testing them. Finally, information on the Internet sometimes proves useful. A considerable amount of the Internet-based data is worthless, but occasionally there are some real pearls, such as Albert Benschop's analysis of Mohammed Bouyeri's assassination of Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, which correlated online statements by the perpetrator with his offline behavior. I started building my database with the 19 September 11, 2001 perpetrators as my index sample of terrorists. I knew whom I wanted to study, the people who carried out September 11th, and all those like them who pose a threat to the United States. I wanted to study this specific threat and did not know whether this group constituted a new form of terrorism or was similar to other terrorists. I did not want to analytically dilute my sample in a way that might have blinded me to some new insights by mixing in other types of terrorists. Thus, I included at first only people who had solid operational relationships with this index sample. After my sample grew to 172 individuals, which was the basis of my earlier book, I discovered that they were linked to a network of terrorists associated with Osama bin Laden. After the bombings of the U.S. embassies in East Africa on August 7, 1988, this group began to be referred to as Al-Qaeda. It is important to understand that I did not embark on a study of the phenomenon of terrorism in general. I suspect that there are many forms of terrorism, just as there are many forms of murder. Yes, terrorists and murderers all kill, but each kills in his or her own way. It is difficult to place them in the same category and compare them. My goal was to understand how September 11, 2001 became possible, which meant I was interested only in the perpetrators of the attacks and those similar to them. That focus means the results of this study may not be generalized to other forms of terrorism not covered in this volume. The size of the sample allowed me to see what they had in common, namely that they were part of a violent Islamist born-again social movement, which then allowed me to expand the sample to over 500 members at the time of writing. By concentrating on this particular sample, I do not mean to imply that terrorism is unique to Islam or that all Muslims are potential terrorists. This social movement consists at most of a few thousand people, and the worldwide Muslim population is almost 1.5 billion. The social movement thus represents only an infinitesimal proportion of Muslims. Islam, like all religions, advocates peace. However, like any religion, scattered groups of people have justified their murderous activities in its name. This does not mean that there is something specific about Islam that implies terrorism. In fact, Muslims seem to be latecomers to modern terrorism. The next chapter will outline the historical, social, and political context of this terrorist movement.